Hello, my name is Robert Zukowski. I'm a professional photographer and retoucher, and today I'm going to show you how I retouch my images from start to finish. I have over 10 years of experience in this field, so I'm going to share some of my secrets with you. Enjoy, and maybe you learn something. So I open up this image here in Photoshop. I use the latest version. I mean, that workflow works pretty well with every version of Photoshop, I would say, since Creative Suite 5. So a long time ago. So this shouldn't be any problem. And normally I would use Capture One to develop my raw files. But in this case, I want to stick with Photoshop. So I'm using Camera Raw because it's widely common. You can use it without paying for it because it comes with Photoshop and it works totally fine. Okay, I shot this image 2017. And I still like it, and I haven't retouched it for quite a while. So we'll see. I have no idea what I'm going to do. This is not the best situation because it's always good if you have a plan, what you want to achieve. In that case, I don't have a plan, but I want to achieve a clean look, and I don't want to go too crazy, a modern look, a look which could appear in a magazine. So this image was shot very bright, but all the information is still here. Nothing is clipped. That's very important to have a better result. Okay, but the exposure is pretty high. I would lower the exposure. First of all, I would change the white balance because I shot this on a gray background, so it's easy to pick the white balance on a neutral area. If you are shooting this kind of images, I really recommend to use something like a gray background or some neutral color in the images, or a gray card, to have an image with a gray value you can trust. But you can do it with just feeling, you know. In the end, it has to look right, and you have to like it. So it doesn't have to be correct. Okay, the exposure, I bring the exposure down because it's way too bright. I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit. So as I told you, I don't have a plan. I just go from top to the bottom and will apply everything I need. I recover some highlights because they are getting very bright when I increase the contrast. Black's white, no. Texture, no. Clarity, maybe. Let's try 10. Don't go too crazy with clarity because it looks so fake and artificial when it's too strong. And this is not very modern. You don't want to oversharp your images, and you want to make them too sharp. You want to achieve an organic look, a more analog look, I would say. It's more common nowadays. Okay, vibrant saturation. This is something we will change in the colors. This is the basic setting. Curves, we don't need curves now. Details. This is the I know this maybe feels wrong, but I'm really not a fan of sharpening images, so I will reduce this. No noise reduction needed. Color mixer. Okay, this is the point where it starts to get interesting. I would shift the reds towards the orange a little bit. And I would change the luminance. I would reduce the luminance here and in the reds. And maybe I reduce the saturation to make it a little bit more pale. Okay. That's fine. The overall look, like color grading, I would really do in Photoshop, not in the raw
not in the raw configuration. You can do this. I mean, if you already know what you want to achieve, you can do this here and just optimize it in Photoshop. But in this case, I don't know where. Okay, I have an idea. I want to try something. But this is not the way I'm doing it. I'm doing it in Photoshop. I don't like this. I don't like these tools. I mean, you have this in Capture One as well and in Lightroom, but I don't like this color grading setting. Optics, remove chromatic aberration, profile correction. I don't use this always, but sometimes it's just good. Effects, grain is something we will add, but that's basically the last we do. Calibration, we don't need that. Okay, so I'm going to open up this image in Color Space Pro Photo RGB. It's the biggest gamut, so with color depth of 16 bits. Open it up in Photoshop. So we duplicate the background layer because we never work on the background layer. This is really rule number one if you're working in Photoshop, but I think you already know that. If you don't, you're welcome. You can duplicate this layer in several ways. I always use shortcuts, and I recommend to use shortcuts. It's way faster. Command J is the shortcut for duplicating layers. And I'm working on a gray background, sometimes dark gray, but this is too similar to the background, so I'm going to medium gray. Never white or black, because it's too harsh. Everything, look, you can't really judge colors or contrasts by using a black background, for example. So medium gray is always good to go. And the next step is doing the shape. And the shape of this pullover here has to be fixed. So I'm going with Command Shift X. No, Command Shift X, yeah. And I'm going to liquefy this pullover a little bit. Keep the natural shape, but don't make it perfect. But just a little bit correction here makes it look more tidy. Okay. Normally we can use this liquefy tool for hair as well. It's very good for hair and clothes, I would say. Not that much for body shapes. I mean, you can use it, but this is also something that has changed a lot nowadays. If you work with clients like big brands, they really want to achieve a natural look. They don't want to use, they really don't want to have this artificial, super retouchy look. They want that people think that there wasn't anything done to these images, which is not true, of course, but it's not that obvious. Okay. Just checking if there are sensor spots, because my camera wasn't always that clean. No spots. Okay. So now I'm going to use what is the name in English here? Healing brush. Okay. And I'm going to fix some skin, but I mean, she's very pretty and she has already awesome skin. So there's not really much to do. In the texture, I'm using the healing brush with a sharp edge. You really want to avoid creating patterns. So be very selective with the areas you choose. Sometimes I reduce some of the highlights, but I mean, we are not going to use this image this big. So if you're using it for the web, you don't have to go too close. You can save a lot of time by just not working on like 180%. So this was a very simple setup at home, at my home studio back then. No makeup artist. 2 lights, you can see the lights. This was an octobox. And this is a softbox. And this is my favorite setup for portraits. It comes very handy for skin. Freckles, I really love freckles. They look, pretty. They give some structure to the skin and more detail, and detail is always good. Okay. Oops. Okay. Some of these hairs, I would reduce that. I mean, you don't have to go this close, but yeah, I'm going this close. I really like the hair. They're a little bit messy, but that's totally fine. Some of these flyaway hairs here, no, they look perfect. I wouldn't reduce them, but you could if you want. Okay. So I've worked like for 5 years as a full-time retoucher on big brands, huge campaigns for basically every brand, you know, and every fashion magazine. So this what I'm showing you is very much the way the industry is really doing this stuff. I'm not just a YouTuber who's talking about beauty shots without having any clients in this area. So this is very good information for you. If you want to do your images a favor and retouch them in a very professional way. I don't use any plugins, for example. There are not many plugins that the industry is using. Some for grain, for example, and some for enlargements, but no retouching plugins. Like, there are some retouching plugins out there, but you really don't need them. I mean, the tools you're using are pretty old, to be honest. That's why you can use a very old version of Photoshop to work with. But you don't have to, because you have the Creative Cloud, so you can use the latest version. Some stuff comes handy with the new versions, like content aware fill. I do this to lighten up the corners, because I don't like this vignette look. This is something, a personal preference, but I don't like vignetting too much. It looks outdated for me. Okay, the next step is dodging and burning. I mean, there are plenty ways to do this, and I show you two ways. One is a simple way, which I'm using sometimes when I'm lazy. And the second one is the professional way, how you would achieve the absolutely best results. But sometimes it's really not necessary to go this complicated way. So I also use the simple way for some cases, but I want to show you both and you can choose whatever you want. So first of all, I'm going to create a contrast layer, which helps me to identify darker areas because we want to lighten up darker areas. I create this black and white layer, turn the and adjustment layer for contrast, go like crazy up to 100 and reduce the brightness depending on the image, just to see darker areas better. So it's more contrasty and it's easier to look at for a longer time. I mean, we don't have to look at this image this long because on this specific image, but sometimes you spend a lot of time like very close on and you for a very long time, and if it's always on color, it's hard to look at, you know. Your eyes are getting very tired, very fast, very tired. So it's easier to work on a black and white layer. Okay, so the easy way or the lazy way is go back to this layer and activate a curve and change the display mode to screen. And turn this mask into black so it's covered. And use a brush to paint in. I mean, I hope you know the basics of Photoshop, how mask and layer work, because I think I don't start at the very beginning. So if you don't know how mask and layers work, you really have to figure this out because it's the absolutely basic information, and yeah, you have to know this. So we're painting on a black layer with a white brush, and we lighten up areas that we think are too dark. For example, I use a soft brush, 100 flow, opacity 5%. You can change the opacity just by using your number pad, which is very handy. So 5% is 0.5, or just 5 is 50%. Yeah, so 5%. And I'm painting in this area. Let's do this. It's more beautiful. Yeah, I'm brushing in the screen mode from the adjustment from the adjustment curve, so it brightens up the area. And this is something you really have to practice. I mean, I know when I started out, I really went crazy with this dodging and burning, and back in the days it was very common to overdo it to make it look very artificial. Nowadays we really want, and especially in the in a professional area or in a high-end retouching section, you really don't want to overdo stuff. So it's a matter of practice, I would say. This is something, yeah, you can't just get told. You have to try it and you have to figure it out what's too much and what's fine. So I'm looking for dark spots which are striking my eye, if this makes sense. She has freckles, so we don't want to lighten up the freckles, of course. We just want to lighten up some dark spots. And this is the lazy way. Adjustment layer curve, screen mode. You don't, I mean, the benefit is it's way faster, and if the changes are not too big in brightness, it's no problem. But if the changes are getting too big and you lighten up a very dark area, it starts to break, because the color change due to this brightness change is too big, and you have to correct the spots because they become very saturated. So this is how the mask look like now, and this is before and after. I mean, it's not that much, but it changes a lot, I would say. And when you turn this helping mask off, it's also very strong. So this is the lazy way, okay? And now do the professional way. Yeah, you can delete this, but I keep this for now. No, I delete it. It doesn't matter. So you also create a curve, and then you go to this hand symbol, which activates this eyedropper. And now you decide, for example, this is a dark area I want to brighten up as an example, and I like this tone as a reference. So this is the brightness I want to achieve. So I click Shift, hold Shift, and I eyedrop this. Then I press Command Shift to this area I like. Then I activated here Windows Info. So this info windows appears. It's important because we need these values here for RGB. Okay, so we picked values, and these values are saved here. The first number, the first three numbers. Now we go to the color channels, and we go with Command 3 to the red channel and adjust the red channel to the number we just picked, 173. Then we go to the green channel by option 4, and we adjust 148. And we go to the blue channel by option 5 and put in the number 122. So everything is lightened up to this value it was here before. So we turn this mask, turn it to black, and we get rid of this, like with command, with command option, you can get rid of this. Yeah. And this is the brightening part. This is the complicated way, the professional way. And we do the same like before. So we are going to paint we're going to bright these dark spots up like the same way we did before. We can also activate the eye helping layer combination, whatever you want to call it. And the benefit of this technique, I mean, it takes a while, and especially when you never did it before, it's like, oh, well, what? It's complicated and stuff. But if you're going to be, if you are used to it, it's you don't really think about it. You just do it very fast, and you could do it like the same as fast as the other technique. And the benefit is that you don't have this color shift, because if you brighten up an area, it always changes the saturation. And this technique isn't changing the saturation, because you just change the values. You change the darker areas to the value you choose before. It doesn't fit always in all areas, so sometimes you have to repeat this process for separate areas. But yeah, it depends on the image. And So I'm going to, this is how I already mentioned, you have to practice this, you have to develop a look, you know, you have to, no, not develop a look, that's very German. You have to train your eye to know what you're looking at and what you're looking for and what you want to achieve. So don't go too crazy. We want a natural look. We don't want an artificial, shitty, cheap look. And if you overdo retouching, this is the best way to destroy your images because it always looks cheap. And this is not something, you don't spend that much money for camera gear and so much time to shoot images to make them look cheap, don't you? Okay, so don't go too crazy. Always check before and after by turning this on and off. And sometimes you went too far, you can just go back, just reduce the amount. Okay. That looks fine to me. I turn this off.
Thank you for watching this video so far. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel if you like the content or even learned something new. I really appreciate that. And now we move on in the retouching.
Yeah, I don't know how much time I spent in Photoshop retouching this, but I did it for 5 years full time. So I spent a lot of time in Photoshop. And it really doesn't matter what images you're retouching. I mean, I've retouched like superstars, international superstars, for example. Yeah, a lot of football players, of course, because they are doing a lot of advertising, different teams from all over the world. A lot of celebrities like movie stars, musicians, business persons, like big business persons. Yeah. Okay. So this works fine for me, and you can do this the same way to reduce bright spots. This was the lighting up spot, and you can reduce, like the cheap way would be activate the curve, screening mode to multiply, turn it, and then reduce too bright areas. But also, this is the cheap way, so if you go too far, the areas you are affecting are getting gray. And this is not something you want. So you can do the professional way, and by doing the same stuff, but just the other way. So you choose a bright area you want to darken. So you choose the bright area and you adopt the dark values. But we don't have to do that here, to be honest, because it's not necessary. We can go with the cheap way. Oh, always watch out what layer you're working on. Okay, maybe a little bit of darken here because this hand is so bright. Okay, next step. And you see, this is also very important, your structure. I started, oh, I didn't save that. Always save. I didn't save that so far. I'm going to save this here. Photoshop, it's fine. Your structure. I started with retouching and then adjustment layers. And there won't be any retouching above the adjustment layers. If you retouch something, always go down to these layers and work in a very clean structure that you always could go back. I mean, if anything went wrong and I think, oh, I've overdone this image, I can just turn these layers off or reduce them. I just could paint in and reduce this. Or I just could even go back to this state. So it's very bad if you have done something to the image and the client wants to change something and you can't go back. And you have to start from the beginning. So you can save a lot of time and nerves when you work in a very structured way. Oops. Okay. So I want to achieve a more contrasty look, and I'm going to reduce the midtones, but on just on the luminosity. Yes, this is something I like. And now I'm going to adjust the color. I think this whole image is still too colorful in some areas. It's too reddish and too yellowish. So I'm going to add some cyan. And to change this, I'm going to name the layer because cyan plus. No, I'm just kidding. I'm lazy. I don't do that all the time. But you should, if you have a very huge file. I mean, this file is very small, just a few layers. But I've worked on projects with like, basically, I don't know, 200 layers with like folders and folders in folders and layers and smart objects, and so you should really name your stuff. So I'm painting in cyan on the areas where I think they are too reddish, because it's the complementary color to red, so it makes it more neutral. And reddish images in the skin tones are also a factor for making it look a little bit cheap, in my opinion, of course. That's just my opinion. And this always that also applies to black people. If you're working on black skin, a too reddish skin doesn't look that well. It's much better if it's more to the cyan side or orangey side. Yeah, and I highly recommend to work on a calibrated monitor like I do, because you can't do any color corrections if you don't know what you're actually seeing. So if you don't have a fancy monitor, try to buy at least like a calibration tool, like a spider or whatever, from color data, I think, or there are different brands out there, but I'm using this spider tool. Or back then, before I started my own business, we had like ISO monitors which calibrate themselves. Pretty nice, pretty expensive. Yeah, but try to calibrate your monitor. You really, if you see the change for the first time, you see a before and after you calibrate it. It's crazy how wrong your monitor is displaying your images. And you have to really be sure that you know what you're working on. Okay, let's put some orange and reds in the midtones, because this area here is a little bit grayish on the hand. And here, this area is very grayish. We don't want gray spots in the skin. We have to add a little bit of, magenta, because some areas are a little bit greenish as well. So we add a little bit magenta. If you add color, I mean, you can do this by curves or here by what this is called. I don't know. This tool. I don't know. I think colors are a little bit more, curves are a little bit more accurate. But in the end, I mean, yeah, some areas are a little bit gray and greenish, so we have to balance the color in the image. And this image really has very simple color structure. It has like reds and oranges and yellows. That's the basic color. There's not much color happening here. And this is something I really enjoy, shooting headshots like that. It's focused on the person and not on the clothes. Still, I would add some blue to some areas because I think they are too yellowish, too yellowish, too orangey still. So cool some areas down. This is also something you have to practice. You have to really train your eyes. Train your eye to see color in that way that you can see if this is working or not. I mean, you have to practice it. There is no easy way around. Midtones, reds. And this is something really depending on your image. I mean, you can't apply this on every image, but just look for gray areas. You don't want to have gray spots in the skin. You want to have a very smooth skin with as a smooth. When I say smooth, I mean I'm talking about color. You don't want to have too much spots with different colors, too much color shift in the skin. It always should look, good. Now we are going to the reds and shift it a little bit towards the orange, so it looks weird, but we are turning this mask around and we are painting in. It's always the same. I mean, just different tools, but you're doing basically always the same. Applying, reducing, or turning the mask and painting in the effect you want. And these fingertips are very red. This area is still very red. And I hope you can see that in the video quality of YouTube, but Yeah, and I think I want to add some magenta because the eyebrows are a little bit greenish in some spots in this area as well. And I think it's still too saturated in some areas, so I would reduce 10%. 20%. And you see, it's always guessing work. And we go to the... No, we do it overall situation, reduce the situation. Okay, I think this is a good... I really like this look. But wait, I'm not finished yet. I want to check the levels. What are the bright spots? Where is the bright level I like? So I'm looking for, I'm holding down Option while I'm pressing on this triangle here. And it shows me the areas where the white is clipping. So as I'm pushing Option key down, I'm shifting the levels to the left. So I see, bright areas are coming up. And I always want to have the face not clipping, but as bright as possible. And the shirt was clipping, as you see. So we have to reduce that. 20%. No, 50%. Reduce this. And we do this with the blacks as well. Oh, it's already good. Yeah, I'm not quite sure about the look. I mean, maybe I go back with the saturation, like to this point. No, it's too much. Too much color. -8, yeah. Okay. And you can, if you want, just brighten up the eyes a little bit, just the highlights in the eyes. You don't have to do that. And be very careful with this because it can look very cheap very fast. But I would, in that case, brighten up this area a little bit because it's so dark. Not too much. Always check out before and after. And get rid of this. And there's a bright spot which is really bothering me. Multiply. This so bright. Okay, I like this look. So let's create a folder for all the... This is retouching and... Okay. Keep your structure. So make a group. Color. And retouching. Shit. Retouching. And help. and turn this on, turn this red, so you know you have to turn this off. Save. So you can like turn the color on and off, or turn the retouching on and off. I mean, there's not, I mean, this image would be also work without the retouching, to be honest, because she's just a pretty girl and a pretty woman, and just to enhance this beauty. No, you don't have to do that, of course, but I want to show you what you can do. And this is something I really like. I really like the result, the color, complementary color from the blues and cyan and the reds and the eyes fitting the background. This is something that works very well. And there are 2 more steps I want to do. The next step is not always necessary, but it bothers me. It's the framing. I would crop this image a little bit because it's too off-center. And when you're cropping images, this shouldn't be applied. So you can always go back. That makes your file bigger, but trust me, if you have to go back and the background is gone, it's annoying. This is the new crop, which is more focused on her. I think this works pretty well. And the final last step is something I really like. Some people don't, but to be honest, in the advertising world, this is always applied. We create a layer from all the layers we've created. So Command, Option, Shift, E will combine all the layers we just created. So there's a layer and we call it grain. And you can sharpen this image if you want. Create a layer, sharpening, apply sharpening, duplicate this layer and apply grain. Always separate this. But I don't want to sharpen this image. So I'm just doing grain. I go to Camera Raw filter, which brings me back to the start. Effects, grain, like try 25. And try 40 to make it a little bit more, bigger grain. A grain to a certain point, I think over 29. When you go to 30, it really affects your sharpness. So don't go crazy. I like 25. Yeah. Apply 25, 40, 50 was the setting for the grain, and I always put this here, 25, 40, 50. So when I'm doing more images of this series or I'm going back, I have to make some adjustments, or the client want to change something, I know what kind of grain I've applied. You can also use plugins, which are very handy. You always want to know what kind of grain you have applied. So, okay, this is the image. I'm very happy with this image. This is the before, and this is the after. Before and after. The before is already, of course, a raw developed, but this is the final image we created in Photoshop. Yeah, and we have to export it because we have to use it. We want to use it online, so we are going to export it. So save it for the web. Web-based images always have to be sRGB, and you don't want to create too huge files because you can't upload them. Yeah, so Command Option Shift S will open up a screen to export images to the web. We change this to JPEG, for example. When I'm exporting images from a website, embedded color profile, very, very important to check this box, to tick this box. Let's see, quality 100, full resolution. This image it's not that big because it was a D750, so it's just 10 megabytes. But if I want to use this image on my website, of course I'm going to reduce the size because it will take too much time to load on my website. So I'm going to quality 60 for most of the time. It's more than enough. It's still quality level high. And reduce the height, the long side, to 3000 pixels, which is still plenty. It's still way too much. And bicubic smoother for as an option, because it won't add any sharpening on this setting here. You could even go lower, but I always try to save it as 3000 pixel long side. I save it. I have the Photoshop file and I save it in full resolution, and additionally at 3000 pixels for web use. This is something we save. Desktop, good to go.
If you are interested in photography and retouching content, please consider subscribing to my channel. There will be more in the future. And if you are interested in how I convert this image into black and white, check this video out.